The city of Veltraxis Prime never truly slept. Beneath its layered arcologies and floating tramways, the air shimmered with neon fog and the ever-present pulse of advertisement drones. Between rain-slicked alleyways and scentless flora that glowed under artificial starlight, the massive trading sector was a cacophony of cultures, noise, and lonely souls drifting in search of something they couldn't quite name. Among them walked Kale Drayan, a freighter captain, without a crew, a home, or even a real destination. Clad in a synth leather coat, scorched by plasma trails and pockmarked from years of docking accidents, Kale moved like a man whose mind was adrift. His ship, the Caladrus Run, had seen better days, and so had he. His boots made hollow sounds as he stepped over glowing puddles, dodging the brush of robotic delivery units and skittering microcleaners. Above the colossal billboards cycled through everything from new cybernetic implants to emotional simulacra, the latest fad for the emotionally exhausted. Cal rubbed the back of his neck where a neural socket throbbed from overuse. He didn't come to Veltraxis for cargo. He didn't come for trade. He came for silence. He came for someone to keep the silence from swallowing him whole. Cal stopped at a storefront that shimmered between visual modes. One second it appeared to be a typical pet adoption center. The next it flashed with alien glyphs and 3D projections of exotic creatures from across the quadrant. The sign stabilized in glowing gold script, Bio-Companion Nexus Adaptive Companions for every species. He hesitated. Need company that won't talk back unless you want it to, a nearby holoboard cooed. Cal grunted. Why not, he muttered to himself. It wasn't the worst idea he'd had that week. The entrance slid open with a hiss of pressurized air. The interior was sterile, softly lit, and oddly silent. Rows of clear habitat tanks and containment pods lined the walls. Some housed creatures with iridescent fur, others floated in nutrient gel, staring blankly out. A multi-limbed attendant, vaguely insectoid and wearing a translator node, clicked forward. Welcome, Sapient. I am Tavesi, Curator of Adaptive Companionship. How may I enhance your solitary existence? Kyle resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Something intelligent, low maintenance, doesn't bite unless asked to. Tavesi's antennae twitched. You seek premium companionship. Follow me. Cal followed the curator through layers of sealed doors and privacy fields until they reached a dimly lit chamber marked Class 4 Empathic Entities. Caution. He paused. Empathic Tavesi gave a subtle nod. They feel, and sometimes they make you feel back. Kale stepped through the threshold and found himself face to face with something or someone completely unexpected. She crouched in the corner of the enclosure, her posture somewhere between feline and humanoid. Her skin bore a soft shimmer like moonlight on liquid metal. Her hair shoulder length and layered in strands of deep teal obscured part of her face. She wore a simple black garment, sleeveless and asymmetrical, bearing long limbs that moved with slow-coiled grace. Around her neck was a faintly glowing band, its soft blue hologram reading, Subject 741 E, Silex Emotional Sync Capable. When her eyes met his deep amethyst glowing faintly from within, Kale's breath caught. They weren't blank or vacant like a trained pet's. They were watching, waiting, judging. What is this? Kale asked quietly. Tavesi spoke with practiced ease. Species designation vary. Biologically close to bipedal mammalian structure, but neurologically evolved for synchronous bonding. Her contract allows for 6 months of companionship services, pending client compatibility. All arrangements legal under Interstellar Charter Law, Section 49.3. She's sentient. Yes, cognizant. Voluntarily entered into bonding registry following refugee clearance protocols. Cal frowned. You're selling intelligent beings. Tavesi lifted a clawed hand. Facilitating integration agreements. The alternative for many is far less kind. The very world fractured during the Terra Drift. The survivors need sanctuary and allies. Kale stepped closer to the glass. The woman's Silex didn't retreat. Her gaze remained steady. What's your name? He asked her directly. Silex, she replied, her voice rich and musical, but edged with weariness. You chose this, her head tilted, eyes narrowing. Would you choose hunger and radiation sickness over temporary ownership? Kyle exhaled through his teeth. He'd seen the aftermath of collapsed systems. He knew desperation when it stared him in the face. How much? 40,000 credits, Tevesi answered. Kale didn't hesitate long. He knew he shouldn't do it, but something in Silex's eyes. They reminded him of every time he'd been stranded in the void, wondering if anyone would bother saving him. He transferred the credits. The moment the contract finalized, the containment field dropped with a gentle sigh. Silex rose smoothly, her movements like liquid shadow. She stood a full head shorter than him, but carried herself like a warrior. Kyle held out a hand. She looked at it, then took it. Their skin touched and a warm surge flared up Kale's spine as if someone had lit a fire inside his chest. "You felt that, didn't you?" she said softly. Kyle nodded slowly. "Good," she whispered. "Because I did too." The Caladris run was as unremarkable as its name. A mid-range freighter built for speed and cargo flexibility, it had served Kale for 6 years across contested sectors, pirate-controlled clusters, and fringe zones of the Coalition. It had never hosted a guest before. Silex followed Kale through the ship's narrow corridors, her boots silent against the metal floors. She took everything in with unnerving attentiveness. "You can stop with the crouch walk," Kale muttered. "I saw the contract footage. I know that posture's just an act." She stood upright at once, her full height barely brushing his shoulder. "Comfortable now?" she asked with an arch of her brow. Kale gestured toward a side room. "Spare cabin. Yours." Silex stepped inside, examined the Spartan furnishings, then turned back toward him. "My kind prefers proximity." Kale raised an eyebrow. "I bet they do." "I'm not teasing you," she said plainly. "Vayari are synesthetic empaths. The closer we are to someone, the more balanced our systems. Isolation causes feedback instability. You're saying you need to be near me for your health. I'm saying I'd like to be near you because something about you doesn't feel like silence." Kale didn't sleep much that night, not because of Silex's presence in the room beside his, but because of the weight her words had dropped inside his heart. He had come to Veltraxis to buy a companion for his loneliness. Instead, he'd brought a mystery into his life. And mysteries Kale knew all too well never traveled alone. The Caladris run lifted off from Veltraxis Prime just as the station's artificial sunrise bled orange and violet hues across the orbiting city's uppermost towers. Kyle barely noticed the view. He was too focused on the ship's navigational readout status diagnostics, and most importantly, the silent passenger watching him from the co-pilot seat. Silex sat with her legs crossed, her posture regal, her gaze distant as she traced her fingers across the faint blue glow of her wristband interface. She hadn't said much since boarding, and Kale wasn't sure if that made him relieved or more uncomfortable. "Any destination in mind?" he finally asked. "I assumed you had a route. I was thinking frontier systems. Supply drops, maybe a coalition contract if they're desperate enough." Silex hummed. "You sound like a man avoiding something." Kale didn't respond. The silence thickened like fog. After a moment, Silex turned toward him. "You're uncomfortable. With you?" "Not exactly. Just adjusting." She smiled faintly, a glint of sharp amusement in her eyes. "My kind has a saying, those who avoid the storm usually find it inside themselves. That's supposed to mean something to you." "Probably," he sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "You always talk like a mystic, or is that part of the package?" "No, just part of me." As the ship cut through slipstream space, Kale showed her around. The Caladris wasn't large, a 2-person crew at most, with most of the internal space given to modifiable cargo bays. He pointed out the basics: galley, medbay, engine, access sensor nodes. Silex took it all in with the same silent observation, never asking twice, never needing anything repeated. But it was the moment she entered the galley that Kale caught something new in her expression. "Smells synthetic," she said, wrinkling her nose slightly. "Well, it is. Rations, protein packs, vitamin-enriched gel tubes. You'll get used to it." She moved toward the prep station, examining the nutrient unit. "We Vayari can ingest human food. It's not optimal, but better than this." "You can cook," Silex gave him a sideways glance. "I can adapt." That evening, the scent of something not horrible wafted through the corridor. Kale followed it back to the galley where Silex was plating something that looked suspiciously like real food, pan-seared starch cake with a protein reduction and reheated greens from the stasis crate. He hadn't even known the ship had greens. Where'd you learn to cook? He asked, hesitating at the doorway. Observation, application, improvement. She slid a plate toward him. Eat. He sat across from her, eyeing the meal with suspicion. It's not poison, she added. That's a relief. He took a bite. Warm, savory, a hint of spice, real spice, not the synthetic heat of ration paste. For a moment, Cal was transported to the rare outpost taverns he'd stumbled into during his loneliest missions. This is... He paused, then nodded. Actually good. Thank you. Silex sipped from a steaming cup of mineral tea. Feeding one's bond partner is a very tradition. Kale nearly choked. We're not bonded? Her expression didn't change. Not formally. But that's the implication, isn't it? He leaned back in his seat. This whole contract thing, it's just ceremonial language for something deeper. Silex set her cup down gently. The contract protects us both. Without it, Very like me risk exploitation. With it, we are given legal standing agency, however limited. We may be labeled companions, but the connection is real. And yes, sometimes it evolves. Evolves into what she looked up, her eyes unreadable. Into what's needed. Later, Kale lay awake in his bunk, staring at the overhead panels. He couldn't stop thinking about the way Silex had watched him during dinner, not with flirtation, but with discernment. He was used to being alone, used to people wanting something from him, fuel passage, money protection. But Silex hadn't asked him for anything, not even comfort. She just was, and somehow that unsettled him more than any demand would have. His comm link chirped, a transmission request. He tapped the interface. Go ahead, a distorted voice filtered through the speaker. Freighter Caladris Run, this is Coalition Auxiliary Command. We flagged your vessel with a high-priority escort request, medical-grade cargo classified manifest. Interested Kale frowned. Medical cargo affirmative, remote colony Certa-7 suffering plasma virus outbreak, hazard pay included, transmission package incoming. The file landed with a chime. Cal glanced over the numbers. This is 10 times the usual rate. You're the only independent ship within jump range. Why the secrecy? We're operating under blackout protocols, civil unrest and media interference. Accept or decline within the hour. The transmission cut. Cal sat motionless for a beat, then turned as he felt her presence at the doorway. You heard that? He asked. Silex nodded. I felt it. Felt what your hesitation, your suspicion, and your pull towards saying yes. He sighed. Would you stop doing that? I can't. It's what I am. Cal rubbed his jaw. Something about that job doesn't sit right. But if it's true, if a colony really is suffering, we could make a difference. You've already decided, she said, walking to the viewport. The stars swam by in streaks of blue. You're not the type to turn away. Would you come with me? Silex turned slowly. I'm already here. They reached Certa-7 within a day. Cal brought the Caladris into orbit, scanning for signs of traffic. Nothing. Not even a planetary beacon pinged back. That was the first red flag. Where's the landing authorization? He muttered. Silex sat beside him, fingers tracing invisible symbols on her wristband. There's a signal encrypted, barely above noise threshold. Can you crack it? Already have. A moment later, a docking vector lit up on the screen. Cal descended. The colony's surface was eerie, massive biodomes buried in dust storms, landing pads half lit and seemingly abandoned. No one came to greet them. No escort, no port staff. Cal powered down the ship and checked the manifest again. Then he turned to Silex. Watch the ship. No. He blinked. No, if something is wrong, I'll sense it before you do. You'll need that. We go together. They moved through the silent outposts like ghost weapons, holstered but ready. Silex's eyes shimmered in the dim emergency lights. This place is wrong, she whispered. Kyle stopped at the edge of a sealed door labeled Quarantine Zone 2. His scanner blinked. Multiple life signs. Faint. Cryostasis pods. Silex stepped forward. Her voice dropped an octave. They're not patients. They're children. Kale's blood chilled. What she pressed her hand against the door. I can feel their emotions. Confusion. Panic. Sleep. Stasis trafficking, he said grimly. They're smuggling kids under cover of medical relief. Silex's voice hardened. They're Vayari. Kyle stared at her. This wasn't a coincidence, she continued. They knew I was aboard. This was bait. For what? For you. For us. For anyone who tried to stop them. Kyle drew his sidearm. Well, they're about to find out how bad an idea that was. Kyle moved through the corridor like a shadow, every step measured, every sense stretched tight. The Caladris run sat behind them, sealed in standby, and now he and Silex stood in the heart of what had once passed for a medical quarantine dome, now repurposed as a front for interstellar trafficking. Silex's voice echoed in his mind, not through comms, but through something deeper, subtler. A whisper of thought, a pulse of warning. There are more of them. Pods, he murmured, eyes flicking over the containment crates stacked like cargo. No, people. Her voice was barely audible. She stepped beside him, one hand trailing along the stasis pods. Watching, waiting. Kale's grip tightened on his weapon. The cryostasis units bore coalition insignia, familiar, reassuring. But the scent of the air, the layout, the complete absence of medical personnel, all of it screamed deception. He crouched beside one pod, brushed frost from the display panel, and read the biometric tag. Subject Vayari Minor, age approx. 6 Terran cycles, status sedated. He stood. We were never meant to deliver aid, no, Silex said. We were meant to deliver them. A sharp clink echoed from deeper inside the dome. Cal raised his pistol, backing toward a pillar. A figure emerged, tall, armored face, obscured by a smooth black visor. Not coalition, not pirates either. This one moved like a professional. Kyle Drayan, the figure said, voice distorted through a modulator. Stand down. You've interfered with an authorized consignment. Authorized by who? Kale snapped. Not your concern. Transfer the bio-companion and the vessel manifest, and we'll forget you were ever here. Kale didn't hesitate. He fired. The plasma round hit the intruder's shield, sending sparks flying. The figure staggered back but didn't fall. Kale fired again, this time aiming for the weak joint at the neck. This time the enemy went down. Before Kale could catch his breath, Silex grabbed his arm, her pupils' dilated skin glowing faintly violet under stress. More incoming. 5. Heavily armed. How do you know? Her eyes flashed. I feel them. Kale swore under his breath. We can't fight them all head on. Not in here. Then don't, she said, and moved. What happened next was a blur of movement, light and breathless adrenaline. Silex led him into the adjacent module, a storage annex once used for cryofluid processing. She tapped into the building's emergency protocols and reversed the air pressure systems, creating a vacuum seal that Kale overrode just in time to avoid suffocation. Behind them, the corridor filled with boot steps. Kale crouched near the exit hatch, watching through the slats as 5 more intruders entered the pod bay. They weren't pirates. Their armor was too clean, too uniform. Private military. Coalition aligned maybe, but working off the books. Silex held her hand against the wall, eyes closed. I can confuse them, she said softly. Confuse them. She turned to him, lips slightly parted. It's risky. It will trigger a neural echo, a wave of emotion. They'll feel fear, mistrust. But so will you. He met her eyes. Do it. A second later, Kale felt his heart seize in his chest. His vision warped. He saw flashes of his worst memories, fire ripping through his first ship, screaming over broken comms faces he'd left behind on doom stations. Cold sweat poured down his back, but it worked. On the other side of the door, he heard panicked voices, shouted commands, weapons discharged at shadows that weren't there. The operatives turned on each other, their training unraveling under emotional bombardment. Kyle snapped out of it just in time to see Silex fall to one knee. He rushed to her. Hey, you okay? Her voice trembled. Not built to affect so many at once. Feedback loop. He helped her up, wrapping her arm over his shoulders. You bought us time. That's all that matters. They stumbled back toward the stasis bay, but not before Kale tapped into the facility's uplink and dumped the entire internal archive into his ship's encrypted drive. If they survived, he'd expose everything. If they didn't, well, someone might find the wreckage. Back aboard the Caladris run, Kale sealed the ramp just as plasma fire lit up the landing pad. They're following Silex, worn from the co-pilot seat, her breathing still ragged. Then let's make them earn it. Kyle growled, slamming the engines to full burn. The ship rocketed from the surface, cutting a sharp arc into the upper atmosphere. Behind them, two pursuit craft launched from concealed hangars' wings, swept back weapons primed. Silex activated the ship's automated countermeasures, but Kale knew it wouldn't be enough. These weren't border skirmishers. These were professionals with too much to lose. As the stars returned and the system's gravity began to loosen its grip, Silex sat upright. "We can't take them to a standard port," she said. "They'll intercept us. Seize the children." Kyle cursed under his breath. "Then where?" She hesitated. "There's a station, off-grid, hidden in the folds of the Belcar Drift. Smuggler territory." "Yes," she replied. "And sanctuary, if we reach it." He input the coordinates manually. "This better not be a trap." Her eyes softened. "If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have made you dinner." An hour later, after 3 hard burns and a narrow escape through a subspace fissure, the Caladris Run dropped out of warp. The Belcar Drift loomed before them, an unstable nebula, thick with ion storms and gravitational distortions. Few ships navigated it. Fewer returned. Silex's voice was low. "The station's signature is buried beneath the interference. I can guide us through." Kale's eyes flicked across the sensors. "You sure you're not telepathic?" She smiled faintly. "Not exactly. Very don't read thoughts. We read currents. Energy, emotion, intent." He shook his head. "Guess I've been flying with blinders on my whole life." She turned to him. "No, just waiting for someone to open the window." The station came into view like a ghost, half hidden in a rotating dust field, camouflaged beneath layers of ancient wreckage. Old but operational. Lights flickered. Docking clamps extended. As Kale maneuvered into position, Silex reached for the console and input a secure handshake code. The station responded. "Welcome back, Silex," a warm voice said through the speaker. "Who's that?" Kale asked. "A friend. One of the last." The ship docked with a final clunk of magnetic latches. Kyle rose and checked the hold 5 stasis pods, each carrying a young Vayari child, their expressions locked in frozen serenity. He felt a knot in his chest as he looked at them. "I don't know what this is yet," he said, "but if someone's selling kids like cargo, I'm not flying away from it." Silex placed a hand on his arm. "Then you've already chosen your side." The interior of Station Veritas was a relic of another age built during the frontier expansion boom, now lost in the shadowy edges of Coalition maps. The architecture was a fusion of outdated human industrial design and patchwork alien modifications, the walls humming with inconsistent power surges. Though the air smelled of coolant and rust, it was breathable, and more importantly, untraceable. As Kale and Silex disembarked the Caladris Run, a small team met them at the docking bay. The leader was a tall woman in an old Coalition captain's coat worn over scavenged armor plating. Her eyes, cybernetically enhanced, glowed faintly green as she looked Kale up and down. "Well, damn," she said. "Didn't expect you to bring him in person, Silex." "Commander Sarah Talon, this is Kale Drain," Silex introduced. "Freighter captain. Not affiliated, but trusted." Kyle raised a brow. "We're handing out trust this fast now," Talon chuckled. "She doesn't say that often, so I'd take it as gospel." Then her expression hardened. "Silex, you didn't tell me the cargo was this sensitive." "They're Vayari children," Silex replied. "From Serta 7. Trafficked under medical covers. The pods are still stable, but we need help thawing them without neural trauma." Talon's smile vanished. "You weren't followed." Cal crossed his arms. "We were. Got a couple of pursuit ships off our tail by diving through a Class 4 fissure. Pretty sure they won't try that stunt again." "Good," Talon said, then turned to her crew. "Take them to Medbay 5. Get those pods in recovery stasis. Silex with me." Silex nodded, once then glanced at Kale. "Stay with the children. They'll sense you." In the medical wing, Kale stood beside the 5 cryopods as the technicians calibrated their new stasis fields. Each child had been removed from the Coalition sealed containers and reconnected to safer, ethically built units. Kyle watched the youngest, no older than 5 in human terms, stir slightly as warmth returned to her system. Her skin shimmered the same way Silex's did, only tinged with flecks of shifting colors, as if reflecting ambient emotion. "She's waking," a medic warned. Kyle knelt. The child's eyes fluttered open, deep blue-wide with confusion. She stared at him. "Hey," Kyle said softly. "You're safe. You're not in the dark anymore." "Where am I?" she whispered. "On a ship, in a safe place. You've been asleep for a long time." The girl blinked slowly. "Who are you?" Kyle hesitated. "Someone who won't let you go back to where they took you from." She reached for his hand with small trembling fingers. "Do you know your name?" he asked. "Ressa," she said, barely audible. Kale gently squeezed her fingers. "Welcome back, Ressa." Meanwhile, Silex followed Commander Talon into a private chamber, layered with shielding and scrambled transmissions. A hollow display flickered to life, revealing 3 other figures, 1 human, 1 Tarsini, and 1 Vayari elder. "All lines secure?" Talon asked. The others nodded. "Go ahead," Talon told Silex. Silex stood tall, her expression calm, but her eyes burning with purpose. "The trafficking network has infiltrated coalition bureaucracy. They're operating under the guise of disaster relief evacuations and medical transfers. Serta-7 was just the latest example. The children we recovered, 5 of them were being transported for sale." The Vayari elder on the call clenched his jaw. "Did they know your identity?" Silex said. "But that may change. I had to use my neural signature to disable their personnel." The human on the call spoke up. "We've suspected shadow projects in the outer reach. This confirms it. But exposing them will require more than 1 mission." "Then you'll have it," Silex said. "I'm not just here for reconnaissance anymore. I'm building resistance." "And the human?" the Tarsini asked. Silex paused. "Kyle Drayan, unregistered, unattached, and inconveniently noble. He found the truth on his own. I believe he's more important than we know." Talon raised an eyebrow. "You're thinking he's a vector." Silex nodded. "He's already bonded with the children, and Ressa's empathic imprint is reacting to him. His presence stabilizes them." The elder Vayari narrowed his eyes. "Then protect him. If this breaks open, he will be targeted." Cal was still in the medical wing when Silex returned. Ressa was asleep again, nestled in an ambient cocoon of warmth and quiet energy. Cal didn't move until Silex placed a hand on his shoulder. "You stayed," she said. "You really thought I wouldn't?" Her eyes held something between relief and sadness. "Many would have run. Most do. I'm not most." "No, you're not." They walked together through the station's dim corridors, past market stalls, makeshift bunks, and communal screens streaming unregistered news. Silex led him to a small observatory dome, barely large enough for 2, overlooking the edge of the Belkar Drift. Red and violet gases shimmered in the vacuum like fire trapped in glass. Kyle let the silence settle before he asked the question, burning in his gut. "How much of this did you already know before you stepped onto my ship?" Silex closed her eyes. "Enough to feel guilt, not enough to act." "Were you planted?" "No, I registered for a companionship contract as cover. I wanted to learn who was purchasing bonded Vayari, trace the networks, but the connection we made, that wasn't part of the plan." Cal's voice was quiet. "And the kids," she nodded. "Our future. If we lose them, we lose everything." He turned to face her. "Then we protect them." She looked at him long and hard, and for a moment something shimmered in the space between them, an invisible tether. "Kyle, don't say anything," he said. "Not yet. Not until we know what we're up against." She didn't say anything, but she reached for his hand, and this time he didn't let go. Later that night, an encrypted transmission pulsed through the station's outer array. Silex received it first. She scanned the incoming frequency, and her blood ran cold. "Kyle," she called from the comms bay. He rushed in, only half awake. "What is it?" She turned to him, her face pale under the low light. "They've traced us. How, I don't know. But they've locked on our trajectory from Serta-7. A fleet just entered the drift unmarked but coalition-registered transponders. At least 4 ships. They're coming here." Kyle's jaw clenched. "We need to move." "No," she said. "We need to disappear." Kale tightened the final bolt on the Caladris Run's rear power conduit as Station Veritas thrummed under its emergency protocols. Warning lights flashed in low red pulses throughout the docking bay, while sirens echoed like whispers of a coming storm. Somewhere in the station's outer ring, Bulkheads were sealing defense turrets extending from their ancient housings. Silex's voice crackled in through the comms. Cal docking clamps are still active. You need to override the subroutines manually. I'm on it, he muttered, wrenching open a side panel near the cargo ramp. Inside was a tangle of retrofitted circuits, patched over 2 decades of use. He ran fingers along the edge and pulled free a charred relay. That's the one. He yanked it out, and with a spark, the clamp controls powered down. All clear, he said. Get the kids aboard. Fast. By the time Silex arrived at the ramp with the 5 young Bayari, Cal had already sealed the rear thrusters and dumped the ship's ID signal into a rotating spoof cycle. The children were quiet but alert, wrapped in thermal blankets, their wide eyes flicking toward every sudden sound or spark of light. Ressa stayed close to Silex, her tiny hand grasping the hem of her cloak. They're scared, Silex whispered. They're not the only ones, Cal said, gesturing them in. Once we break free, I'll reroute us through the sublayer lanes. There's a planetary ghost orbit in this system, black ice shell. We can hide there for a bit. Silex frowned. Those lanes are unstable. Yeah, Cal replied, powering up the nav console. So are we. Inside the Caladris, the children were guided to the mid-deck cabin Cal had hastily converted into a makeshift safe room. Blankets lined the walls. Old storage crates had been stacked into soft bunk spaces. Silex set Ressa and the others down gently and whispered calming words in Vayari, her voice like cool rain. Kyle watched the way they looked at her, not with fear, not even just with trust, but with reverence, like she was something sacred. I was wrong about you, he said when she joined him on the bridge. Back on Veltraxis. I thought you were just surviving. Silex's expression darkened. I was, until I met you. He glanced at her, surprised. She continued before he could speak. My mission began as observation. Quiet data gathering, mapping the trafficking routes, the networks behind the contracts. But I never imagined we'd find this many children, that it ran this deep, and I never expected to feel this much. Empathy thing. No, she said. You thing. The nav computer chimed, coordinates locked. Kyle's hands danced across the console. Engines surged. The Caladris lurched from the dock just as sensor pings lit up their aft scopes. 4 ships had breached the drift's outer edge. 2 sleek corvettes, a heavy pursuit cruiser, and something else. Something silent. No transponder signal, Silex murmured. The one in the back. Stealth ship, Kale's gut twisted. Or a Hunter-class AI vessel. No crew. Just kill routines. You've tangled with one before once. He exhaled. Didn't go well. A moment later, a gravimetric lock snapped into place. Tractor beam, Silex hissed. Yeah. Not this time, Kale growled, flipping a red switch on the dashboard. Below the ship's hull, he'd wired a delayed burst feedback charge. As the gravimetric lock tightened, it fed back into the beam emitter, briefly overloading the emitter coil. The ship shuddered violently, then slipped free. Cal whooped. Still got it. Silex blinked. You booby-trapped your own hull. Technically, I improved it. She stared at him. What he said. You fall in love with boring freighter captains. She laughed, genuine musical. No, she said. Definitely not. Once free of the beam, the Caladris dived toward the inner belt, a stormy region of rogue debris and frozen moons orbiting a collapsed planetary core. One such moon, Alia 9, was a black ice world once used as a mining outpost. Coalition had abandoned it 50 years earlier. Perfect hiding spot. Kale brought them in fast. Silex overrode the emergency transponder and cloaked their signature beneath the reflective crust of the planet's North Pole cavern. Inside the frozen hollow, the ship powered down to minimum systems. Just enough heat to keep the children safe. Just enough comms to monitor the sector. They were invisible. For now. Hours passed. Silex meditated beside the children, helping them calm their neural spikes from stasis shock. Kale sat alone in the bridge watching sensor returns. Then a chime. Encrypted ping, Silex said, stepping in. Not Coalition frequency. Someone's trying to reach us. Kale patched it through. The screen flashed to life, and Sarah Talon's face appeared grainy but alive. Kale, Silex. You need to listen. I don't have long. Silex leaned forward. We made it out. Barely. You're not safe. Veritas has been compromised. They knew you'd run to Elia 9. Kale's heart dropped. How same way they found Certa 7. They've embedded tracking nanites in the stasis pods, buried in the interface tech, next-gen quantum tags. Silex's face paled. I didn't detect them. You wouldn't. Not unless they were activated, which they just were. You've got maybe 20 minutes before those bastards find you. Kale jumped up. We can't outrun them in the ice field. Not with kids. You won't have to, Talon said. I've rerouted to contact someone deep in the underfleet. They're inbound to extract, but you'll need to surface for pickup. The screen flickered. Who Kyle demanded, but the signal was gone. Kyle raced to prep the Caladris for emergency lift. Silex was already strapping the children into soft harnesses inside the modified hold. They're still fragile, she warned. I know, he said, but I'm not letting them die in a snowball because some Black Ops bastards want to play gods. The ship rumbled as it rose through the frozen ceiling. Sunlight muted and ghostly filtered through the haze as they broke into Elia 9's upper stratosphere. On the radar movement, but not from above. From below, a small vessel was rising from a buried hangar beneath the planet's surface. Sleek matte black. No visible weapons. A single transmission blinked, confirming 5 Vayari miners, 1 bonded escort, 1 human guardian. Extraction authorized. Designation, the Harrowlight. Silex's eyes widened. That's not under fleet. That's an old Vayari name, Kyle finished. What does it mean, Silex whispered, hope carried in darkness. As the Harrowlight docked with the Caladris, Kale helped load the children across the airlock. Inside, they found a Vayari pilot flanked by 2 augmented humans, mercenaries by the look of them, but not hostile. The ship was fast, silent, equipped with stealth fields Kale hadn't seen since the early days of the border wars. Once aboard, Silex hesitated. Kale turned to her. We're not staying, no. They'll get the children to the sanctuary orbit, but you and I were the bigger targets now. We can't lead them there. He nodded slowly. So what then? We go loud. The Caladris run peeled away from the Harrowlight just as the next wave of coalition ships dropped out of hyperspace. But this time Kale didn't run. He aimed straight at them. Inside the modified cargo bay, he and Silex had prepped the Caladris to detonate its ID shell and spill false data packets across 3 sectors. The moment they engaged the enemy fleet, the ship would become a beacon of misinformation, leading the pursuit away from the real prize. We'll only get 1 shot, Kale said as he flipped the ignition key. I only need 1, Silex said, locking eyes with him. The Caladris jumped forward, weapons offline. Shields collapsed to appear vulnerable. 3 ships moved to intercept. Kale smiled. Time to do something impossibly stupid. The Caladris run cut through the void like a blade trailing a false signature cloud designed to resemble a high-value coalition data core. Kyle pushed the old ship harder than ever, slipping through thermal layers, atmospheric shears, and gravitic eddies. The decoy protocol worked. 3 coalition Black Ops vessels closed in. Inside the cockpit, the console lights flickered from energy drain. Silex sat beside him, fingers linked into the command array via her wristband interface, feeding live predictions into the nav AI. They're falling for it, she confirmed. The fake telemetry is holding. Kale didn't look up. Let's hope it holds long enough. The plan was madness. Use the Caladris as bait, lead the pursuers toward the Belcar Rift, a volatile storm corridor, and execute a near-suicidal dive. If it worked, the chasing ships would follow them into a trap, get cut off, or slam into plasma wakes. If it failed, they'd burn alive in a gravitational spike. Silex glanced at him. Still the best-worst plan I've ever heard. He flashed a crooked grin. Told you I wasn't boring. The rift loomed ahead like the mouth of a great cosmic beast. Massive storms curled around fractured moons and collapsed debris. Even light bent awkwardly around its edges. As the Caladris entered the first atmospheric layer, the pressure alarm screamed. Silex's voice was calm. Shields to minimum. That'll make us look like we're losing control. You mean we're not? She ignored him. Now bank left 30 degrees. He obeyed, and the ship dipped hard, sending warning klaxons across the console. Behind them, the lead coalition pursuer, sleeker and faster, followed their trajectory exactly. Closer, Silex murmured. Closer and we won't pull out, Kale warned. That's the point. Another surge. The Caladrus slammed through a thermal surge and veered toward a micro-singularity hidden in the cloud. Just before they crossed the event horizon, Kale yanked the ship hard right and deployed the cloaked pulse buoy. It flared, sending a burst of their ID signature through subspace. "Go," Silex said. They cut hard and dropped under the rift's edge, masking themselves in plasma shadow. Seconds later, two of the Coalition ships hurtled toward the buoy signal straight into the singularity. They never came back out. Kyle let out a long breath, hands trembling slightly. The third ship hung back, more cautious. Silex narrowed her eyes. "That one's different. It's scanning." Kale scowled. "Then let's give it something to scan." Deep in the engineering bay, they activated a cache Kale never intended to use again, an encrypted Coalition war drone scavenged from the Eris collapse. It was old, illegal, and highly volatile. Together, they programmed it to emit the Caladrus Run's transponder, but surrounded by encrypted garbage data that would self-destruct on access. Kale loaded the drone into the external cargo launcher. "Once we fire this thing," he said, "we can't come back." Silex met his eyes. Was that ever the plan? They fired the drone, let it streak toward the cautious third ship. The pursuer intercepted, and when it tried to decrypt the payload, the detonation wasn't visible, but the Coalition ship vanished from the radar in an instant. Silex sat back in her chair, a slow breath escaping her. Kale leaned on the controls, adrenaline burning out. "Well, that was fun." She looked at him deadpan. "Your definition of fun is broken." Back on the outer edge of the rift, the Caladrus coasted on low power, hidden again, drifting toward a relay satellite Kale had tucked away during one of his smuggling runs. From there, they transmitted an encrypted burst toward the Herolite, confirming the decoy had worked and the children were safe en route to Sanctuary. Silex sagged against the console. "They're out. Ressa's safe." Kale studied her. She looked exhausted. Not just from exertion, but from years of pretending, of playing small. "You okay?" he asked. Her eyes softened. "I will be. Now that they have a chance." He stood and extended a hand. "Come on. You're shaking." She let him pull her to her feet. Their hands didn't part. Not this time. Hours later, they were adrift, shielded and scanning for threats. The Caladrus was bruised, scorched, but still flying. Silex joined Kyle on the observation deck, watching a distant binary star flicker between passing clouds of gas. "You still haven't asked," she said. "Asked what?" "Why my people never told the Coalition." I figured the answer was obvious. "You didn't trust them." "No," she said. "We didn't think they'd care." He looked at her. Silex stared into the void. "We watched them watch us burn. When our star started to decay, only a few sent diplomats. The rest sent buyers. Our culture, our talents, even our children became commodities." Kale said nothing. And yet she continued, "You, one man with no rank, no orders, no obligation, saved more lives in 3 days than the Coalition has in 3 years. He shook his head. "I didn't save anyone. I just refused to look away." "That's what makes you different," she whispered. "You see us." Later that evening, Cal was in the bunk reviewing the data logs he'd pulled from the trafficking pod's transaction records, encrypted names routes. It was bigger than he'd feared. A list of buyers, a network of stations, dozens of children still missing. Silex sat beside him, one leg tucked under her, skimming the logs. "These names," she said. "Some of them are Vayari. That's how they stayed hidden through us." Kyle gritted his teeth. "You think they'll come after you after Ressa?" "They already have," she replied. "But they won't stop now. Not after what we've done." He looked at her. "Then we finish it." She blinked. "Finish what?" "The network. We've got names, locations. Let's tear it all down." Silex tilted her head. "You want to hunt traffickers across half the galaxy? On what, this busted freighter?" He smiled. "I've flown worse." She considered that for a moment, then grinned. "You're insane. I'm consistent." Outside, the Caladrus drifted toward a distant nebula. No pursuit, no sensors tracking. For now they were safe. But in the darkness, two beings who were never meant to meet had become something more than fugitives, more than rebels. They had become the spark of a war no one else dared to fight, and for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt alone. 3 weeks later, the Caladrus Run drifted into orbit over a fractured moon known as Kirill's Gate. A former mining world turned safe haven for the forgotten and the dangerous. Kyle's freighter bore new hull markings, a spoofed ID tag, and broadcast a civilian salvage license linked to a non-existent planet. Inside, Kale and Silex reviewed data intercepted from the now-destroyed trafficking vessel. Silex projected the map above the console, dozens of red points pulsing across coalition-controlled sectors. These are the drop-off coordinates, she said. Over 30 confirmed exchanges in 6 months. Dozens of unlisted miners, mostly Vayari, Similari, a few hybrid cases, Pattern Kale asked. Scattered intentionally. Each drop routed through neutral or lawless territory. But the organizing node, she pointed to a glowing triangle centered in a star cluster, deep inside Sector 9K. Here, station called Orveron Spine. Kyle scowled. Coalition intelligence black site. Off-books high security. I've tried accessing it from the network. Even under Vayari diplomatic clearance, it's scrubbed from public systems. Kyle leaned back. So we'll have to walk in. Not alone, Silex said. He raised an eyebrow. She pulled up another hollow window. A transmission request. Encrypted. Origin Verity Reach. Kyle recognized the call sign. You're calling in Talon, Silex nodded. We can't do this ourselves. Not anymore. Within hours, the Caladris met with a stealth corvette near the edge of a gravitational anomaly. Commander Sarah Talon stood at the boarding hatch in her scavenged armor, arms crossed, expression somewhere between impressed and furious. Still alive, she said, and still stupid. Cal shrugged. My best quality. Talon looked at Silex. You've made your choice then, Silex nodded. No more surveillance. I'm burning the cover. And him, Talon gestured to Kale. Silex's tone was firm. My partner. Talon studied Kale for a long moment. Then she nodded. I've brought help, she said. A few off-grid operatives, and someone you'll want to meet. She stepped aside, revealing a figure cloaked in tattered robes. A Vayari male, older with skin that shimmered like steel under light. His gaze pierced straight through Kale. Errol Vexen, he introduced himself. Former ambassador. Now, a traitor to my own council. Kale raised an eyebrow. You're the one who leaked the diplomatic access codes. Errol nodded. And the one who helped Silex get inside the pet registry system. But the council doesn't know that part yet. Silex stepped forward. You're sure about Orveron's spine? Errol's jaw tightened. It's where they're experimenting. Kale stiffened. Experimenting on empathic hybrids. Children. They're trying to force interspecies compatibility. Find a blueprint to clone adaptive traits. It's why they want Vayari so badly. Our neural flexibility. Kale's voice dropped. They're trying to make weapons. Errol looked grim. They already have. The plan formed over the next 20 hours. Errol's stolen codes would get them within scanning range of Orveron Spine. From there, Kale's ship, modified with a false diplomatic overlay, would dock under the guise of transferring a bonded pair for evaluation. Silex volunteered to be the bait. You sure? Kale asked. If they've been watching me, she replied, they'll want me back. Talon added reinforcements, 2 human operatives and a Tarsini scout with stealth implants who would remain aboard the Caladris in case extraction was needed. Before they left, Kale pulled Silex aside in the dim corridor outside the medbay. If something goes wrong, it won't, she said. If it does, he continued, I'll come for you. No matter what. She smiled soft and fierce. I know. He touched her cheek, then her collar, the one she still wore, not out of obligation but memory. You were never a pet, he said, and I was never your owner. No, she whispered, pressing her forehead to his. You were always just mine. Orveron's spine emerged from behind the gas giant like a shadow with teeth and angular station, bristling with antenna arrays and ion shields. It was flanked by 2 escort cruisers and pulsed with dense encryption layers. The Caladris run approached slowly, broadcasting the falsified clearance codes Errol had provided. Kale kept his voice calm on comms. Vessel ID 3XT7 carrying bonded Vayari under research contract 744A. Clearance file appended. A long pause followed. Then a clip voice responded. Approach vector authorized. Do not deviate. Prepare for bioscan. As the ship moved into the docking tunnel, Kale turned to Silex. Last chance to back out. She shook her head. I've waited my whole life to burn these walls down. The hatch hissed open, and they stepped into the lion's den. Inside the station was sterile cold and humming with synthetic calm. Uniformed personnel moved with robotic precision. Security drones patrolled silently. Silex walked half a step behind Kale, her posture submissive, just enough to sell the lie. A technician approached. Vayari, younger, nervous. He scanned Silex's collar. Verification complete. This one's flagged. Kale forced a neutral expression. Special clearance. The technician nodded. You'll be escorted to Lab Theta. 2 guards flanked them. As they walked, Kale's mind raced. Theta deep levels, no external signal, high-risk zone, perfect place for an ambush. In Lab Theta, the walls were lined with observation pods. Silex's steps slowed as she passed one and saw what was inside a Vayari child. Awake, eyes vacant, neural nodes embedded along her temples. Her body twitched with each pulse of the machines. Silex stopped. A hand closed on her arm. Move, a guard ordered, but it was already too late. Silex exploded into action. She spun, disabling the nearest guard with a joint lock and sweeping the other's leg out from under him. Kyle dove for the tech, slamming him into the wall before he could trigger the alarm. From her wristband, Silex activated a stored pulse, short-range EMP infused. Every camera and drone in the lab died. She turned to Kale, breath sharp. Now! The corridor was chaos. Klaxons blared. Lockdown barriers dropped too late. Tarsini Scout Kren came in over comms. Firewalls disabled. I've got a path out elevator shaft to the docking level. Kale pulled the override panel and hotwired the shaft control. Silex, grab her, he shouted, pointing to the child in Pod 3. Silex cradled the girl, who murmured something faintly in Vayari. She's been partially dampened. We have to get her off this station now. Kale gritted his teeth. Then let's finish what we started. As they emerged onto the docking level, more guards closed in. Kale tossed a pulse grenade. Silex shielded the girl with her body. The Caladris's ramp lowered just in time as Talon's operatives laid down covering fire from inside. They sprinted aboard. Kyle hit launch. The Caladris run tore from the station just as the entire docking sector exploded in fire, the result of Kren's sabotage to cover their escape. Behind them, Orveron's spine flickered with internal chaos. Inside the ship, Silex held the girl close. She's waking, she said softly. Kale looked at the child, no older than Ressa, her neural links dimming, her breathing steadying. She has a name, Silex said. Nova. Kyle reached out his hand, brushing hers. We'll keep her safe, he said. No matter what. The Caladris run soared through the deep void of unregistered space, its hull scorched and fractured in places, but miraculously intact. Behind it, Orveron's spine burned a twisted beacon of collapsing secrecy. Coalition Black Ops had just lost their most guarded asset. And in Kale's arms, a quiet revolution now breathed. The Vayari child Nova lay curled in Silex's lap in the medbay, her breathing slow but steady. Her neural suppressors had been safely removed. Monitors showed a stabilizing empathic field, but with erratic pulses. She's powerful, Silex murmured. Her signals fluctuate through layers of emotional spectrum we don't even have names for. She's not just Vayari, is she? Kale asked. Silex nodded slowly. No. Someone experimented on her, altered her genetics with another species' neural markers. I don't know what she is, but I do know what she isn't. Kyle met her eyes. A weapon. They reached the edge of New Eldros, a hidden sanctuary world shielded by distortion fields and a remnant asteroid belt. The Herolite waited in orbit, its sleek profile shimmering against the binary suns. Commander Talon's voice came through the comms. We've cleared the corridor. Bring her in. The other children are safe. Ressa's been asking about you both. Kyle smiled despite himself. Tell her we brought someone new to the family. Touchdown was smooth. A welcoming party waited on the green cliffs that overlooked crystalline oceans. Children Vayari and other rescued hybrids ran freely, guarded by both mercenaries and caretakers in peaceful coordination. The Caladris run was now more than a freighter. It was the first lifeboat of a movement. As Kale descended the ramp with Silex and Nova, Ressa ran toward them, her little arms outstretched. Silex dropped to one knee and caught her mid-leap. You came back, Ressa cried. We promised, Silex whispered. Cal watched as Nova stirred, blinking up at the suns for the first time without glass between her and the sky. She looked at Cal. Is this mine now? He nodded. Yes, yours. All of it. Later, in a council chamber built from salvage alloys and wood grown by Viari terraformers, a meeting was called. Present were Talon Iral Vexin, a coalition defector named Yul Marek, and Silex, no longer just a field agent, but now de facto leader of the Viari Restoration Accord. Kale stood beside her. On the central display hovered the recovered trafficking network logs. 57 active locations, 12 confirmed illegal labs, hundreds of displaced Viari children. Yul Marek, once a senior intel officer, looked grave. The coalition knows. What you did at Orveron's spine made sure of that. Some factions support you. Others want you buried. We don't need their approval, Silex said. We only need momentum. Kale spoke next. We'll use their fear, their lies, their silence. Every time they try to bury the truth, we'll give it a voice. And what about retaliation, Errol asked. Kale's eyes were cold. We're not running anymore. That night, the Caladris run sat on a cliffside landing pad, bathed in moonlight. Inside, Kale held a quiet moment with Silex on the bridge, watching the readouts of the newly constructed Viari colony below. She's sleeping, Silex said softly. Nova, no nightmares tonight. She'll be safe here, Kale said. For a while, but you know what's coming. He nodded. I do. Silence lingered. You could stay, she offered. Could you? He asked. She turned to face him. I was meant to walk into fire, but I don't want to do it alone anymore. Cal reached out, sliding a hand across her wrist. Then don't. She leaned in forehead, touching his, their breath synchronizing. What we've started, she whispered, it can't end here. Then let's see it through. A month later, the Caladris became the first vessel registered under the Viari Human Defense Pact, a cooperative fleet born from survivors, rebels, and defectors. Its new mission: liberation and rescue of any being exploited by trafficking networks across the rim. Kyle and Silex, co-commanders. Nova, now fully stabilized, displayed empathic abilities beyond anything previously recorded. She began training with Ressa and the other children, forming bonds across cultures, teaching both humans and Viari the language of connection. Her ability to detect dishonesty through emotional resonance would soon prove critical in exposing more hidden buyers in the coalition ranks. But that was a war for another day. 5 years passed. The sanctuary on New Eldros grew into a thriving community. Hybrids flourished. The Viari species, once thought doomed, began to adapt not just biologically but culturally. They no longer hid their pain. They used it to forge unity. Kale stood on the balcony of their hillside home, watching Nova lead a group of younger children through empathic breathing exercises. Silex emerged beside him, now dressed in a flowing tunic of Viari design, her hair streaked with pale silver. She's a miracle, he said. She's ours, Silex replied. He smiled. Never thought I'd find a family in a pet shop. Silex laughed and wrapped her arms around him. You didn't. You rescued one. That evening, an encrypted transmission lit up the sky above the sanctuary. Kyle and Silex responded from their command center. Admiral Merrick's face appeared, lined with worry. We've received distress signals from the Drakas Enclave, hybrid colony in coalition space. Unauthorized forces are attempting a lockdown. Civilian disappearances confirmed. Kyle's eyes narrowed. Coordinates, Merrick uploaded them. We'll take the Caladris. Alone if we have to, Silex said. You won't be alone, Merrick said. You'll have the fleet. Behind him, new ships appeared, bearing a mixed crest, a stylized star cradled in twin empathic rings. The Viari Human Alliance had been born. On the bridge, Silex fastened her wristband and turned to Kale. Ready to chase the next fire, he activated the thrusters. I was born for it. As the Caladris run launched from New Eldros, its engines left streaks of gold across the twilight sky. Below, children watched and waved. Ressa stood with Nova, now taller, glowing softly as her aura shimmered in joy. Cal and Silex didn't look back. There were more lives to save, more walls to tear down, and somewhere out there, more impossible, beautiful futures waiting to be born.